Hi, good afternoon, and my name is Dr. Dario Lujan. Welcome to another episode of the Development Faction podcast. Today we have Ms. Carla Lopez. Carla, can you please introduce yourself briefly to our audience?
Of course. Thank you for having me, Dario. My name is Carla Lopez, and I am an electrical engineer. I just graduated from USC with my master's, and I also have a bachelor's from UCLA.
Oh, wow, that's great. Okay, so thank you for coming on today, Carla. I'm very appreciative of your time and you wanting to connect. So today's episode is going to be about empowerment and obstacles as well and overcoming them. So the first question is, how did coming to the United States impact your future?
So I came to the United States when I was 13 years old. My parents and my sister and I here so we could have a better, safe future. At the time that we left Mexico, I come from Guadalajara, so it was starting to be a very risky place for us. My parents were getting threats. It was started to be scary. So my parents thought that for our safety, it was better for us to come here. And my grandmother was living here, so she was the one taking care of us. And pretty much, I think that coming to the United States impacted my future in the sense that it really gave me a lot of options, like when it comes to me choosing what I wanted my future to look like. I know that maybe staying back in Mexico, I don't know what the future will look like when all the crime and the less chances of having opportunities and a lot of corruption that was happening. So for someone with my financial status in Mexico, I don't think I would have been able to accomplish the things that I did here.
Wow, that's actually an incredible story from your origins here. And just a side question, when you got here to the United States, can you please describe the process growing up through your elementary and secondary years, how coming to America completely changed your lens in terms of your opportunities, and can you elaborate on that for me, please?
Yes, so I when I came here, I was 13 years old, so I started high school. I began my education here in ninth grade. Pretty much, everything was a change. I was becoming a teenager. I didn't speak English. I didn't have my parents. I didn't have my friends. And then I dealt with this cultural shock because everything was different, and I had to be more independent as soon as I got here. So mostly I focused on um, making sure that the sacrifices that we as a family, my parents like sending us here, my sister and I, and just me and my sister just having each other because really my grandma's really old, so she really couldn't do much for us. Um, Making sure that those sacrifices were worth it. So that's why I tried my best and I started talking to a lot of my teachers, like to look for mentorship and try to figure out how I could, go to college and have the best opportunities that I could in my position. And I started, just trying to learn English really quick. I actually got out of the ESL program within 1 year and a half.
It's incredible.
I was just calling to the principal's office and they were like, hey, your professor submitted a request for you to get out of ESL earlier so that you can start taking AP and honors classes. And I just signed a contract that said, oh, I cannot use as an excuse if I get a bad grade, that I just don't understand. So there were some things that I had to sign in order to get out earlier of the
Hmm.
program, which I did. And I was able to start taking honors and AP classes and graduate with a 4.22 GPA.
Wow, that's incredible.
Um, yeah, thank you. And I applied to colleges, and that's how I was able to get into UCLA straight out of high school. But we can get into that later.
Oh yes, most definitely. And I
Yeah.
think here that's leading me to like the next process is describe you competing for the scholarships, especially when you got into UCLA. And can you just
Mhm.
explain how you took a very non-traditional path. I was reading
Hmm.
in some of the articles that you had at USC that you took a non-traditional path. First, you went the community college route, and then you went
Yes,
into UCLA. Correct? Describe that for us. Thank
yes.
you.
Yes, of course. Thank you. So when I graduated high school, I had gotten accepted to UCLA, but back then there was a law that prevented me from getting any financial aid. So I wasn't able to get any financial aid to cover any of the tuition costs. And although UCLA was my dream school at the time, I couldn't attend. And especially coming from a low income family, there was no way my parents like having an income in Mexican pesos, like trying to turn it into dollar currency and then being able to afford that, that was no way. So this is why I decided to go to community college because actually when I was in high school, I was taking a couple of classes already in community college during high school to start my credits for college. Um, so then I decided to go to community college. I went to East Los Angeles College and Los Angeles City College, both colleges, and I completed my lower division degree courses there. And I was able to also obtain three associate degrees, one in science, one in mathematics, and then one in physics. So the way that scholarships came into the story is that I was actually walking down the hallway and I saw like the announcements billboard and I saw this scholarship for Jack Kent Cook Foundation and I was really interested. So I just went to the transfer center and I asked my um, the counselor there, and I was like, "Hey, I saw this scholarship." So she told me that it was a huge scholarship and that only one other student had gotten that scholarship before
Wow.
from our community college. So then she said that it was very challenging. But she said, "Oh, with your grades, you could probably apply for it." So I decided to just apply. We went through all the essays. It was a very, it was stages and lots of essays and a lot of information that we had to provide. And then during my last semester at community college, I was in my differential equations class, and I don't know where a crew came in with all this video recording stuff and with a huge check. And it was for me because I had gotten the scholarship, and they were like, "Oh, you
Wow.
are this year's recipient," and they came with a huge check, just like with my
Mm,
name and cameras of recording, and it was like a really nice thing. So after that, I was able to go to transfer. I actually applied again to UCLA because to me that was my dream, and I just wanted to feel like I completed it. Because
yes,
before the only thing holding me back before was financials.
exactly.
um yeah, so then now that was an obstacle, and I decided to go to UCLA. They were giving me 40,000 per year
Oh,
for
wow.
up to
That's a
four
lot.
years. Yes.
Wow.
So I was able to complete that and not have a lot of financial stress on me. So I do think that my path was different.
Hmm.
And although I remember, like, graduating high school and being like, oh, I worked so hard and I cannot go to the school that I want, but just because of financials, it was very
Yes.
upsetting for me. And then I realized that, you know, how much actually going through the community college path, although it wasn't what I envisioned, it
Hmm.
was what worked out the best for me because I ended up with my three degrees. I graduated with a 4.0, and at this time, I also had a full scholarship. So everything worked out so perfectly. And I think that that's what set me off to start off great at UCLA.
Wow. That's a very eye-opening story because when an obstacle is placed for most of us, that you think, oh my God, is this the end already? And did those thoughts ever creep up into your head saying, okay, I'm going to have to go this route? It's, did you think that the route was longer than what others in your high school class were able to do on their own?
I think that I was also younger, so for me it was more thoughts that were a little bit more in the immature side because I did graduate when I was 17, so I was more emotional about how
Yes.
things played out because in my mind, I was like, the only reason that's holding me up is that I don't have the money to pay for
Mhm.
it. And I worked so hard these 4 years, to have this GPA, to do extracurriculars, to do volunteering. And at the end, I can't even go. So for me, it was hard to understand. And then I also, I thought a lot about like, all my friends are going to college, seeing other people go and seeing that I didn't have that opportunity and it was out of my hands, was really upsetting. And I was also afraid that I didn't know what the future looked like even after community college because I didn't know about this scholarship. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get any scholarships at all. So it was just like fear of the unknown,
Yes.
you can say, because I, I didn't have a clear vision of the future. And after working so hard throughout high school and then thinking that it was going to be different, it kind of made me feel like, what if it's the same way now? Like, what if I work hard again and then it doesn't happen? But then, I always kept my goal because I was like, this is my dream. I
Yes.
remember my first field trip going to UCLA, and I was like, I'm gonna come here. And I think that that is just like me keeping that thought in mind and working hard to make sure that I accomplish that.
So how did it feel? Let's jump forward. You graduated from UCLA with high marks and honors. I read your
Mhm,
LinkedIn profile. How
mhm.
how was that transfer going into USC? Because I was reading in one of the articles. Can you explain like how you were treated in your engineering program at USC?
Yeah, so my engineering program at USC was actually very good. Um, the environment was different because when I was in community college, um, it was lower division classes, so it's a lot of people still figuring out whether they want to stay or not in engineering.
Yes.
So it's pretty diverse. It's still, a lot of women, a lot of men, equal, all ethnicities in there. Um, so it's still very normal, like
Hmm.
any other major, you could say. I think I started realizing how electrical engineering was way more different at the end when I was taking my last community college classes, because usually by that time people already have really set if they're staying in engineering or not, because you already invested 2 to 3 years in
Hmm.
community college doing this.
Yes.
So that's when I realized, like, like I remember like having that's where my first class as the only woman in the classroom was, and I was like, whoa, like there's really not a lot of people like me here. But going into USC, I guess that kind of like set off the transition,
Hmm.
because going to USC, it's still like the environment was the same, like mostly men, and I've had classes, actually at least one class every semester where I was the only, not only Mexican person, but like the only woman in the class.
Yes.
And so the environment was the same, but I did realize that, I was able to make a lot of connections with my professors, with my classmates. My classmates were very supportive. And also, like, the engineering department was like just really, really like supportive of me. They personally reached out to me after every semester, and they were like, hey, do you need anything? How was this semester? Do you need places to study? Like, just
Hmm.
anything that I might need to make sure that I was successful, which I thought was really nice, because this is a very different experience from what I actually had during undergrad when I was going to UCLA.
Okay.
So yes, my program in USC was much better.
So I need to ask because I'm a
Mhm.
competitor as well. What was your competitive edge going into USC? Because as we both know, USC is a competitive place. So can
Mhm.
you, through your lens, can you describe the competition at UCLA compared to USC in terms of your educational experience?
Do you mean like in the sense of academics or
Yes, the academic part and just the overall programs, because like you said, you graduated to a master's
mhm.
program, correct? And
Yes.
within that engineering, can you just describe the high level of competition that it took just to make the grades that you did with your high marks?
Yes, so I think between UCLA and USC, I think the biggest difference would be with when it comes to classmates, because we know, as we all know, engineering is very team oriented. You're rarely gonna have a
Yes.
job in engineering that's individual. You work with a lot of
Yes.
people from different engineering fields. So it was more in the sense that, I do realize that at UCLA, people were more, they were your classmates, but they were very competitive. And we
Hmm.
are talking about people who, their generationally part of UCLA, like, their grandparents when they're their parents when
Yes.
they're in their third generation, their
Legacy type
friends,
of
their neighbors.
admissions. Yeah.
Yes, so they know how it works.
Hmm.
And they're very competitive amongst each other. And these are people who, usually I would say for the most part, because I don't generalize, but I think that they were really financially stable to be in UCLA, especially because they
Okay.
pay international fees.
Yes.
So their only stress
Obstacle.
in reality was going to school. Like that was their only
I see.
responsibility. Whereas, like a person like me, I had to figure out ways of making money on the side, or
Hmm.
you know, taking my classes, also being extracurricular activities, doing volunteering, because you want to be well-rounded everywhere, because ultimately that's what's
Yes.
gonna land you a job after, right? You cannot just be good in your classes and then you neglect
Hmm.
all these other areas. So I do think that they were more competitive compared to at least my classmates at USC. Everybody was very supportive. They were more willing to help each other. So that's the biggest difference that I noticed, and which is why I enjoyed my program at USC way more, because I didn't
Hmm.
feel like I had to compete, and also the competition was fair. In the
Yes.
sense, like, we all kind of help each other. Yeah, so I think that that's why I enjoyed my program at USC much better.
Wow, that's just a good dichotomy of it's like a tale of two cities, right? Whereas
Yeah.
UCLA, that's your dream school, but it's highly individualized competition. It's like alpha versus alpha because
Mm-hmm.
you know when you go to an institution like UCLA, it's the competition. It's the best public
Yes.
university in the country. But then when you go to
Mm-hmm.
USC, you're kind of like that was your only mode at that particular time at UCLA, knowing that hyperized competition, that and then it's like a total 180 when people are supportive. There's still that competition
Mm-hmm.
aspect because I mean you want the best jobs in engineering, but it's more like
Yeah.
the competition was like within yourself, correct?
Yes, and I feel like it's more like a community. Like we all care about each other, and if we all succeed, then our school succeeds, and we're all good.
Hmm.
Which is not I think sadly the same thing as it was in UCLA.
Ah, I see. Okay, I just wanted to get more
Hmm.
perspective on that. Now, switching gears, how did your experience overall between UCLA and USC, how did that shape your overall point of view in terms of going into not only the field of engineering, but establishing yourself as a female entrepreneur in this ever changing society?
I think they both helped my decisions on how I wanted to kind of like go into the entrepreneurship area. What I do think that UCLA helped me a lot with was preparation. Actually, they have a requirement when you go there into the engineering program, that you take I don't remember exactly the units because it's been a while, but I think it's 12 units. So it's like four classes
Mm-hmm.
in a major that's not your direct engineering field. So,
Oh,
like,
wow.
let's say if I'm an electrical engineering, I have to take those units, but in
Hmm.
mechanical or in civil, or they also let you choose the entrepreneurship program, which is the
Oh,
one
wow.
that I did because I've always wanted to learn about it. And I
Hmm.
think that it gives me a lot of skills that maybe other fields in engineering wouldn't have been as useful for my personal goals.
Okay.
So I chose to do that. And I think that just learning, a lot about, business talk and how to do business plans and,
Hmm.
all the conceptual stuff. So I think that that's a really great thing because it really set me up to understand more of that, especially me being a first generation
Hmm.
student and also, having this drive for entrepreneurship. It really set a strong base for me to want to explore that and then later on use it. And when it comes to USC, I think that what's really great about them are the connections and the network that we have because we really do support each other. And, if you really want to learn about something like, I remember wanting to start a business because I did start a business while I was in college. And I was like, I don't even know how to get started with this. So I actually reached out to another one of my friends that I met through our network, our USC network, and she fully mentored me through it. And then after that, now I'm starting a second business, and now I did it all by myself because I have that past experience that
Hmm.
I learned through our network. So I think that that's where USC comes. It is very helpful. Is that we're all
Hmm.
willing to help each other out, just like I met you.
Hmm.
Same thing. I feel like we're very connected and we're always, putting time out for each other.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I got because I was just flipping through my USC through my LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
I had just seen your story, like that one post, and I'm like, I
Hmm.
have to interview her because that post
Oh,
like gripped me. Seeing you on the stairs first when that's at Beaufort Hall, right? That's right next to the
yes,
bookstore. I love that
yes.
that part of USC. It's a very
Hmm.
I love the campus period, and I love
Yeah.
California. But
Hmm.
seeing that metamorphosis, like when you're coming in, and USC does change you in that way. I'm not being a homer or anything, but it does change you in that way because it's just a different experience.
Yes.
It's competition, you know that, but the competition is within yourself. When I was going through my doctorate program, I
Hmm.
can sympathize with what you were just telling us in the audience that
Yes.
USC was more communal. Like there were people there to help you, and I never felt
Yes.
alone during my doctoral program because I'm a highly individualized person. I like getting it done on my
Hmm.
own. But my experience at USC showed me another lens that you can get it done communally, share the credit, share the wealth, but also it makes you feel better because you just made connections with the
Yes.
other people through the Trojan family. Yeah, it's real. It's a real thing. A lot of
Yeah, I
people
agree.
when you go to like other universities, I don't know if this is true with your experience at UCLA, but
Hmm.
there is a strong bond when you see USC with another person. There's just an
Hmm.
instant bond that I don't know how to explain it in calm term or in layman's terms, but it's just an experience where it's like if you've known each other all along. It's a very
Yeah.
familial experience.
And people like like I made connections. I was the one giving the commencement speech this year for graduation, and
Oh,
I
congrats.
met people that one night in the stage and helping me out. They're like, hey, you need a job right after, let me connect you with this, and
Yes.
still great connections. We still keep contact, and I just met them, and it's people who are met me for one night and willing
Yes.
to put all the time to try to help you, which is why I try to do the same. It's always giving it back,
Yes.
and it's
Yes,
true
that's
what you
correct.
said, like our community is so supportive.
Yeah, you're right. Now, I have to ask this because I just want to. We can't avoid it.
Go ahead.
2020 happened, right? We were just like this, how we are right now, reduced to like Zoom, Riverside, whatever communication device we could, right? So,
Mhm.
can you take me through your experience during the pandemic? You had just gotten admitted, correct me if I'm wrong, you had just gotten admitted or were admitted into USC, and then this
Yes.
pandemic happens. So, can you just describe the obstacles, your journey through that time period, please?
Yes, of course. So I actually, well, when I made my applications for my master's, it was during November 2019.
Hmm.
So right before the pandemic happened, and I remember. getting my acceptance letter while we were, it was in April, so we had just been in lockdown.
Hmm.
And I was like, I kept picturing myself. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. It's going to be online. And from what I remember, I think that I was comparing a lot, like my experience from UCLA, and I was really worried that it would be the same at USC and then on top of it online.
Okay.
I could barely imagine it. So I was like, oh no. And I was like, I hope this is over by the time I go back. Maybe they'll let us go back because, every month, every week, there was a new update like, yes, no, yes,
Yeah.
no. Um, which I feel really bad for the people who were actually in school during that time because it must have been way worse because they were bringing
Hmm.
them in and back and in back.
Yes.
But for me, it was more, I was worried about it being online, about making the adjustments so that I would be successful in my classes.
Okay.
But once I started, it was challenging in a lot of aspects, right? But not only for me, I think that for everyone, even if you were a student or working or not, right?
Yes.
Um, I think that it was just like figuring out how to adjust to the online instruction and then putting in the extra effort to try to make connections with my instructors, like
Hmm.
so that, they had time and I had time and both of our times matched. And I was able to make connections with them as mentors, not only as instructors. And also
Yes.
like, when it comes to team projects or anything with other, like
Mhm.
just meeting classmates, it was hard because you really couldn't do so. In person you can just start talking to them if they sit next to you or behind you, and
Yes.
online you really can't do that. So it was more like trying to build that sense of community, that
Hmm.
connection with both your professor and your classmates.
Hmm.
um, I think it was also very difficult to figure out extracurricular activities or research because campus was closed, so you really couldn't just go to a lab and
Okay.
start doing work or anything. But it was still expected of us. Even when I graduated, they were like, "Oh, I know it was COVID, but what did you do?" We don't get excuses as engineers. They always want you to be showing that you're doing something. You can't just be going to school. So it was also like trying to figure it out what to do or what projects I can do or how can I continue this hands-on experience as well. Um, and also I think that it was very emotional time with the all the race issues that were raised during this time, all the
Yeah.
politics, and with all these like lockdowns and curfews and how people were behaving, especially when you live in the city. Like I live very
Hmm.
close to downtown LA, so it was very scary those days where they literally had us in lockdown, and after 6 p.m. we couldn't go out, and you were like you could hear cops outside. It was really
Hmm.
scary. So not only that, like like just figuring out like with the fear of COVID and
Hmm.
trying to keep people in your, personal life like safe,
Safe, right? Yeah.
as well as yourself.
Yes.
And it was just a lot of uncertainty that I think that added with the stress of school and trying to, it was kind of like sometimes I felt like playing it off, like none of this is happening and I'm just a regular student taking a class. Um,
And, yeah, no, and I again I do empathize with that because at that particular time I was publishing my dissertation and
oh, I'm
we
sorry.
yeah, I get that a lot, believe me. I was publishing my dissertation, I was getting it done, and then someone tells me in the next room, you might want to come and see this because I'm a public school teacher and I'm also
Uh-huh.
I teach at our community college here as well, and
Yeah.
it's like the day you'll never forget because we were already on spring break and I was at a restaurant and I
Hmm.
saw the former president. I saw him shutting down the country, and it was like very so
Yeah.
surreal that a lot of these thoughts that you didn't have 10 minutes ago, now they start to run through your head because you know that this situation isn't going to improve in in the near future, especially when
Hmm.
we have the government shutting down, the economy shutting down, and then all of a sudden I get on it's natural, I got on my cell phone, I started emailing my dissertation chair and she said, we're just going to have to adjust. But she also had the mindset that, okay, you still have something to produce. Just because there's a pandemic going around doesn't mean you
Yeah,
stop.
yeah,
And
I
yeah,
agree.
and that's what I was getting from your reply, that as engineers in your field of study, you don't stop. You don't stop.
Yeah,
There's
I
no
think it's
excuse.
more like as professionals, right? We don't get
Yes.
a break.
And,
Even if there's the world's ending, that has to be turned in.
and I'm glad that you actually keyed in on that term, because I use that term a lot. Be professional, right? You need
Mm-hmm.
to be a professional, because that's why you attended the schools that you did. That's why I attended USC as well, was to gain that
Mm-hmm.
professionalism, to learn how to handle difficult situations. And your life
Yes,
story, and as well as mine, we've been in a lot of them. So
yes,
your experiences now soon become advantageous to you, because you're using your experience that you've been in one hard situation
yeah,
or another, or obstacles. When other people are panicking, you're the only one that's breathing. And
yeah, and it's true. I know that because I remember when I started my first semester, I was like, you know what? Because, when we things are happening, and I cannot do just because I was like, I'm going,
yes,
it's gonna go there, and I'm whether they want to that or
yes,
I'm just gonna do it because I need to do this. And a lot of people say to do it. And that in the spring this would still happen,
hmm
but it was saying still have the same that we did, but since they didn't know and they did not take that, they just delayed.
yeah, yeah. No, I do agree with that, and that was just an overarching issue that I hope we never have to go through again, because it showed you, like, personally, not you personally, Carlo, but like myself as a person. It's like a mark, trying to check how strong you are, and how you plan, how you deal with difficulties. We couldn't control COVID. We didn't control it until right of late, right when the vaccine started to come out and started rolling out, and the treatments, right? But in the middle of April through December, all the way to January of 2021, it was pretty eerie. But we still needed
Yes,
things to do. Things needed to get done. And I remember, I'm not saying that COVID was advantageous to everyone, but I used that time here at home to get ahead on my dissertation, to keep on going. But it was like what you just said in your earlier response. You kind of kept it in the back of your head. This isn't really happening, or the you didn't want it to happen, or you didn't want it to get worse. So yeah, I
yes.
definitely empathize with that. Okay, so we've come to the final question. So what are your future plans in entrepreneurialism and in engineering?
So, like what you raised down earlier, pretty much just new, uh, my own, hope in the future, my own company, and that's what I want to continue. Else, and growing right now is just in so uh, we days and just go to learn from the that I try to be able to think for many companies at the same time. And later on, I do envision having my own engineering company, and just help other people, uh, like me and you, um, you usually don't see in this field. Make that one opportunity regardless of your gender, your economic status, your race, things that I've dealt with, and I still like because people say they're like, oh, if I did it, it's true. I had a lot of adversities, my life, like nothing not my family, a clue of what to do. Not that able to, like, I didn't do it by myself to me and and go where I am now. I'm still growing, I'm still learning, and I'm going to because I was helped. But honestly, that's that successful find in things in others. Uh, but I really think it's hopefully visions that that work out. I get to change other people's lives.
Wow, that's very, very encouraging because we're going to need not only engineers, but we're going to need to build this country. And the people who built this country, they had those engineering mindsets. Like something had to work, something had to go, and that's what created industries, sub industries that employed a lot of people. But it all started from that engineering capitalistic mindset to keep on going no matter the obstacles, to create the businesses that you want, correct? I don't want to misjudge what you're saying, but you want to create more businesses, but also to impact people so that way that they can make not only a life for themselves, but a life for their families, correct? That's what I interpreted from what you said. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Carla, for coming on the Development Faction podcast. We do appreciate your time, your experiences through obstacles, but also through being like a phoenix, rising above the ashes and continuing to go forward. I really did appreciate this interview, and just thank you for your time, Carla. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much. It's great, and thank you for being to other people like us and just experience and
Carla, I don't mean
resources.
to cut you off, but I can't hear you. You're breaking up. I'm sorry.
Hear me?
A little bit. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I hate interrupting people, but I just couldn't hear you.
Is it, can you hear me?
It's like you're breaking in and out. Like I can hear like part of your conversation, but then I can't.
Let me try to switch my headphones. Maybe I don't change it.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. What I can do is I can put us on my WebEx, and then we'll just record that last question if that's okay with you. I'll send you the link to my WebEx. Carla, are you there? Okay. Is it okay if I send it to your Yahoo email address, the WebEx?
It's perfect.
Okay. I'm going to get off of this platform, and then I'm going to get onto another one. Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'll see you in a minute. Thank you so much.
Okay.